Hey
Yo,
everybody, welcome back to Royas Bytes. It's been a while since we have done one of these.
yeah, hi guys.
Today we're gonna be reacting to SpacetimeDB. It's our first reaction video, which
Yeah,
uh
we'll see how this
we'll
goes.
see how it goes. I'm Tate.
I'm Patrick,
You've seen Patrick. I
and
don't think you've seen me before, so
yeah, face reveal.
I guess. Okay, so we're gonna be watching through the video and talking about it. So Patrick, when
Yeah,
you're ready.
we'll give our thoughts throughout. Let's go.
So we have seen this before.
Yeah, we have, and we've got some thoughts. I
I'm
think it's
Tyler,
cool tech.
founder of
It
Clockwork
is
Labs.
cool.
We're a 40-person game studio, The Beginning. The game we're building is Bitcraft, an epic survival crafting.
So first off, that
massively
game looks
multiplayer
fantastic.
game.
They're really
All
taking
players
advantage of
join the same
stylized
world and
graphics.
rebuild civilization
It
from
looks
the ground
good.
It looks really
The
good.
entire world is editable.
And I
Players
like
can
the
cut down forests, build
hexagonal
roads, or
voxels.
construct
Those are
massive
nice.
cities and
Yeah,
territories.
no, I think these devs have done a
Bitcraft is
fantastic
our
job
studio's
with
first
very
commercial
little.
game. And conventional wisdom
Mhm.
is that you should never build an MMORPG as your first game.
Oh,
Much
let's
less one
pause.
of this scale and complexity.
Okay,
Okay.
yes. Don't build an MMORPG as your first game. However, many people actually do.
Yeah, that's very true. Especially back in the day, it's kind of weird. MMORPGs used to be a lot of people's first games, and then it
Yeah,
became this thing where it's like never touch them.
and
I feel like
I think
oh,
it's
go
just
ahead.
the barrier for entry became higher. Not because of the difficulty, just because of people's expectations became higher.
Well, I do think that they touch on something very good later on in this video that I think the tech stack has gotten a lot more complicated, and so everyone feels like they have to do everything all at once.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, you used to have a client, a server, and a database, and that was it. Now you have all these other things that like people are experts in, and so the tool chain has gotten very complicated. But I don't think a lot of the times you need it to be as complicated as people are making it, especially as an indie team.
Yeah. Because thing is, RuneScape doesn't have anything like prediction or even a high tick rate.
Yeah,
And so people love that game. I think making a good game is above all. And
the
then
most important thing.
the most important thing. And you can get around a lot of things. Obviously security is now much more of an issue than it was back in the
Yes.
early 2000s and the 90s. But there's also more tools like PlayFab, which I think they cover in this video, to help
Yes, they
with
do.
things like, users. User
Mhm.
database management. So yeah, just I want to touch on that, so let's continue.
And
Okay.
this is the reason why. MMORPGs have historically been hugely complex engineering projects.
Notice how they
requiring
don't list
specialized
RuneScape.
engineers from many
Yeah.
disciplines. We're
No,
talking
because they don't want a
hundreds of developers.
shoestring budget
Over
here.
5 to 7 years.
Do you think it actually requires $200 million to make an MMO today?
No. No, I think
Like-
that's just I think the
Like-
reason why is because they keep copying WoW. And they keep
Yes.
saying, "Oh, we have to match WoW's quality." And so thing is, one of the last successful MMOs was Albion Online, and that was a Kickstarter
Mhm.
game with a team of like
Yeah.
10. You don't
Exactly.
need $200 million. You need passion, some skill, and a dream, and unique ideas.
Yeah, something that's not WoW. Also, Palia. I don't think Palia was anywhere close to 200 million.
So no, not
But-
even close. Do I think? I think if you want to compete with WoW, if you go back, I'm assuming they show all WoW clones.
Let's
Let's look at that.
An MMORPG is your
Yeah.
first game, much less one of this scale and complexity.
Let's see.
And this is the reason why.
Yeah. Okay. Elder Scrolls Online, not quite.
Yeah, but
Elder-
that's a Bethesda or a ZeniMax game.
And
like,
New World, I think Amazon's just bad at making games.
you think you mean you know?
I know
Amazon
Amazon's
is
bad at making
horrible at
games.
making games.
MMORPGs
yeah,
have
you don't
historically
need
been
$200
hugely
million.
complex engineering projects. Requiring
No.
specialized engineers from many disciplines. We're talking hundreds of developers over 5 to 7 years with budgets in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Not only
Again,
does
if
this
you're
restrict
taking
who
on
can
WoW,
participate
yes.
in the genre to
Yes.
exclusively large companies, but coordinating 250 people while also risking $200 million restricts how much experimentation you can do or how
I
creative
I
you
do
can
agree that big companies have been just ballooning them, and so they're not taking the risks.
Yeah, yeah, I think. Well, that's just kind of been a thing with game dev altogether lately.
Mm-hmm.
Is they're just ballooning the budgets and saying, "Oh, but we don't want to take risks, so we're gonna make the same game over and over and over again." Versus, you know, an $8 million game that makes $15 million versus
Right?
they want a $200 million game that makes 20 billion. So it's
Yeah,
just.
which I guess makes sense, but
But problem is also people want the $200 million games.
I think people think they want the $200 million games,
People
but
think people get hyped, but like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was a big step, I think, in the right direction.
yeah,
Because it used to be just platformers kind of popped off, platformers and 2D roguelikes for indies. And now we're getting into more unique territory, more closer to what you would have on a PS3 for indie
yeah.
developers.
I think indie goes through that cycle every once in a while where they get stuck in a genre and then they go back to because like they're
Yeah.
feasibly be. We've never had those kinds of resources. So in the words of Ernest Rutherford, we were going to have to think.
Yeah.
And at a minimum, you're talking Docker, Kubernetes, proxies.
Okay. Let's look at this. See, the thing is if you're an indie, do you need all of this? Do you need
Do you
this
need
much stuff?
proxies? Yeah, but
Like, I think most of this as a small
IAM
indie
roles use load
studio
balancers, databases, web servers, game servers,
you could ignore a
custom
is
little
networking,
bit.
unneeded.
configuration,
Yeah.
real-time networking, microservices, two-phase commit protocols, analytics services, logging services, chat
There's
services,
also
and
the whole thing of over-engineering it, like planning for things that you aren't running into yet. I think as an indie, you kind of gotta be a little bit agile like that. Of it's a problem when we face it when it comes up.
Yeah, I think
on.
you have to be
Dozens of
very loose with your development if you're indie. So
You've got your core technologies and very specialized tools. These are great tools. They're super easy to use, and
yeah,
they solve their specific problem.
So okay, let's look at this. Firebase, PlayFab. Yeah, like these are
extremely
intentionally
well.
just solving
But they're
one
only
piece
a
of the puzzle,
small
which makes
fraction
sense.
of what
Yeah.
an MMO needs.
it's because
Right here in the
Firebase, you
middle,
want
you've got your
Google
game
and
backup
Microsoft to
functions.
handle your
Since they're
logging.
designed for games, they
Yeah.
definitely solve a lot more of the problem for you.
Mirror.
Mhm.
But none of them handle persistence, and they're also very opinionated.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
color
These.
Mirror.
Okay. Pause
Mirror,
it. Pause it. I like how
All
they
super
fail to
opinionated.
mention certain things like eNet.
Yes.
I love how Mirror's here, but eNet's not.
Yeah.
eNet is used
But
very frequently for a lot of backends that you don't see. So,
mhm.
but I like how Mirror's here. Okay, and not Forge or eNet. Something that's a little more less opinionated, I guess. Much less opinionated.
Yeah, and obviously they are not as full solutions, but I feel like Forge specifically probably moves closer to the easy to use.
Yeah.
Or I find Forge easier to use than Mirror. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it's also not quite as. I feel like it's not as linear because they're very clearly just laying these things out in the way that they want to show them as.
Yeah. Okay. Here's my little rant.
Uh-huh.
For these specifically, we changed the world videos that are happening about every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Go into them with a little bit of scrutiny, just a little
Yes,
bit.
be skeptical. Like I'm very excited about this technology. I think they oversell the hell out of it. I
Yeah.
think they try and tell you a story that is absolutely not true.
Yeah.
Like 100% false. It's a
Yeah.
cool thing. They're
But
lying.
it's just there's all these like we brought back direwolves, Microsoft revolutionized the quantum computer. All these
Yeah.
we changed the world videos are happening right now, and I'm confused as to why it's all right now.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Maybe it's just because
I
people
think
want to be
I
excited.
think it's just
right,
a good
now
for.
about
I think
something.
people are depressed, and so they're like, "Oh, we could just get investment if we just pump out a really good presentation and
Well,
something
because
that is cool."
hmm
Like all those things were cool. It's just they weren't accurate.
I think also AI was a big thing. AI got so much money, and every time it was like, we changed the world, and it was like, oh wow, we made a slightly better LLM.
Yeah. So just come into it with some scrutiny.
Yes.
Of what they were built, they become very, very hard to use. And that puts us back up here, where we started. Cloud services and rolling it your own. The cloud's got everything you need.
Yeah.
I like how they're assuming you're not using. Oh, there's bare metal. Okay, I didn't see bare metal, but I like how they don't list. I'm confused by that.
Yeah, this part actually confuses me because AWS does and like Azure and stuff does a lot for you. Like you can have a lot of that automated
Yeah,
on there.
and that's what they're saying. They're just saying it's hard to
But,
use. Fair.
but do you think AWS and Azure is harder than Mirror and like Photon and Netcode?
I haven't worked with them.
I've worked a little bit. I don't
Uh,
know if it's harder by that much.
and if I was gonna work with them, I would have used Volter or something. So it's just
Yeah,
cheaper. Or
true.
DigitalOcean. I don't think they're crazy to use, and you still kind of need Mirror if you're using AWS.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why they're saying it's.
Yeah.
Well,
No,
they're
they say
saying that it's
it's the
complete
most complete solution. So
They're like, AWS is a game engine and That's okay.
AWS is your networking solution. No.
No, it's not. But I remember speaking with WinterPixel, and WinterPixel used DigitalOcean.
Yes, WinterPixel
And
uses DigitalOcean.
they said it was very simple.
Yeah.
To get up and running.
And DigitalOcean's an alternative to AWS and Azure.
Yeah.
And I think GCP is Google Cloud Platform, so.
Oh, okay.
So
this graph is just it's very
I love how that's the complete solution is AWS is the complete package for an MMO.
You don't need anything else other than AWS to do an MMO.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know. I'm sure that was just a simple mistake, but it's just funny.
AWS as my render pipeline. Thank you.
Good luck with that. There's a clear trend here. The closer you get to a complete solution,
because you placed them that way.
Yeah, there's a clear trend here.
And if we just
we placed things in a line.
Yay, we placed things in line. We can draw a line between them.
SpacetimeDB. Everything you need and stupidly easy to use.
What?
So they say everything you need, but it doesn't have a front end. This is a back end solution.
Which is great. But personally, I found the back end easier.
But yeah, there was the whole thing of, well, Mirror was a front end and back end solution and stuff like that, and then like AWS is only back end. I'm confused.
Storage, they're basically the same functions you'd write in a regular game server. They run computations and update tables. You can do whatever you like. Authorization logic, physics calculations, anything really.
See, that's not simple right there. You were having to write all of the code.
Yeah, it's just like handling
when
the synchronization for you. That's it. But you're still having to choose. Go ahead.
It's not. I don't think it's even handling the synchronization for you.
Oh, I think that's what like, the networking things were.
That just sends stuff over the network. Yeah. I don't think that handles synchronization. Well, I guess
yeah, that is.
Make sure that everything's paired, but that's just like you're still having to write all your backend code still. Where they're saying, oh, it's super simple to use because it only has 3 types of things. I don't know. That's like saying, oh wow, Unity's super easy to use because it's only got like a start and an update function. It's only got 2 functions. It's simple.
It's so simple, guys. Just go ahead and make GTA.
Yeah, duh. There's just 2 things.
2 functions. Put everything in the function. Obviously.
This isn't As simple as
Just regular.
okay.
Then you take that module code, compile it to WebAssembly, and upload it to run on SpacetimeDB. You connect your clients to the database and call reducers, just like regular functions, with our powerful SDK.
So you still have to make
code
your
gen,
front end.
or make subscription queries against the data. Subscription queries are just regular SQL, but with a twist. With subscription queries, we evaluate your query and return the results. But we also maintain the connection and send your client updates, so you can see the results change in real time. SpacetimeDB
That is
abstracts
nice.
over
That
the
is
cloud,
nice.
just like your desktop OS abstracts over your hardware.
I think that probably itself is the thing that simplifies stuff the most is the subscription queries.
Yeah, I think so. It's very cool. Again, I don't want anyone to think we're not excited about this. It's just
SpacetimeDB 1.0
not there yet.
is fast enough to handle all the server-side logic and all the real-time subscriptions for thousands of
I feel like you've got to build a lot of tooling on top of this to actually make it like
know how to make an MMORPG.
useful.
Yeah. And that's no exaggeration. Go all the way through the OS stack, over the network, up the OS stack, receive, parse, plan, execute, and then go all the way back. This can take 400 microseconds at best and tens of milliseconds at worst. In SpacetimeDB, all of that is simply just gone, putting your code nanoseconds away from your data.
Okay, did that seem to you like they were saying, because why does it have to send it up the network stack for the client to the server? That's obvious that it has to do that.
Yeah.
And they can't get rid of that. That's
no,
not going
you're
away.
always going to have to go through your ISP to query something. Yes.
But they made it seem like the server, in order to talk to itself, it has to go through that chain. Right?
Some servers do, but like a login
just,
server might have to.
But. Yeah, but you're not doing that every frame.
No.
On the server.
No.
Okay, let's continue.
In cache-efficient tables right next to your code, which is running in the same process.
Okay. You have this in RAM.
SpacetimeDB can easily simulate physics and collisions for thousands of entities moving around.
I like this physics thing, but if you're building your game client and you're building your server, you have to make sure that they're like running the same physics. And because you're predicting everything on your client, if you're running different physics on SpacetimeDB, because even like different implementations of the same physics engine you're gonna get different results. So I think this is where a lot of indies would get hung up, is like having to make sure that they have the same physics stuff running on this server versus their game clients. But that's just me. I feel like that'd be a pain.
That would be.
Not only that, but SpacetimeDB's advanced query optimization implements incremental query evaluation to provide real-time updates for thousands of entities to thousands of simultaneously connected clients, all while minimizing network data and traffic. Single database performance is only half the battle, though.
That is nice. That
also
automates that.
To scale your applications horizontally.
I wonder how you do like proximity checks. I assume you have to build all of that yourself in SpacetimeDB.
I haven't worked with SQL in a while, so you might be able to do that in a query.
True.
You might be able to
do have their positions.
Yeah.
But you'd still have to like write that logic yourself.
Yes.
It might be pretty fast though.
It could be pretty fast. That's one of the things where I'm like, it might actually be very fast to do that.
Yeah.
If that's true.
Applications horizontally with intermodule communication in real time to ensure your clients only ever see rows they're authorized to see.
And that's where I'm assuming you could do something like
and we think it's going to revolutionize how small teams make big games and real-time applications.
Yeah, stuff like that.
We think
that's
it's
true.
Make multiplayer applications 10 times easier to build and scale.
I think it's definitely, once the tooling's done, this will make things a lot easier.
Yeah.
The co-founder of Lightfox Games.
Let's give our final thoughts then.
Yeah.
Really cool. I've seen the Godot implementation, and I haven't had time to mess with it yet.
Yeah, someone made a GitHub where they work with it.
Yeah.
I think from what I was reading on their GitHub page, there's still a lot of issues. I wouldn't want to make an MMO in it yet.
No.
But it seems like it would be fun to play with.
And it might be cool. Like, it might take a lot of the back-end work out of making an MMO, which is nice, because things like security is always going to be painful to do.
Yeah. I imagine there'll probably be a compiler someday where you write a lot of your server code and stuff in Godot, and then you just compile it, and then you get two versions where you get like your SpacetimeDB stuff and your Godot stuff and your like client stuff, and then that's like one thing.
Yeah.
I think that would be nice to have. I don't know if it would be specifically SpacetimeDB. Computational databases have been a thing in research for a while.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's a computational database. Well, it has to be, right?
Yeah, it's computing data.
So it's where research has been really trying to break through for a while, and I'm
Mhm.
assuming they're using a lot of very new research for this.
Yeah. So I imagine others will jump on this pretty quickly, maybe in the next few years at least. And I think this will require a lot of tools to be built for your average small indie team to
Yeah.
be able to manage it. Because right now you still got to build a lot of your back end stuff. Like you got to build your stuff to simulate the physics. You got to build your stuff like pathing. You would have to build your tooling to send the world so that it's in a format in your database that you can write your pathing code. And all that right now is handled in your game engine. But it would simplify it a lot to port that to the server right now
It would.
rather than having this drastically lightens your tech stack.
Yes. And that I think that's going to be the big thing for indie devs is just not having to learn so many things and just learn the one. Because it's
Yeah.
already an ask for a dev to learn a game engine. It's already a big
Yeah.
task. Like, it's not easy.
Mhm.
We've shown many people Godot and Unity, and they freak out. Even people who've graduated CS.
Exactly. But I think right now it's still a big ask to ask them to learn this.
Yeah.
Because it's like they would have to implement a lot of things that they're not used to doing themselves. Because let's be honest, most devs aren't used to building their own pathing system.
No.
And they would have to build that with SpacetimeDB right now.
Or even a lot of their own collision systems.
Yeah, collision physics.
Yeah.
They'd have to implement that on both the front end and the back end in a similar way so that it could predict things properly. When you've got a 30-40 person team, you've got people who are used to that, which is fine.
But if you're
That's
a
great.
1-2-man team, then that's going to be
I
difficult.
think, yeah, and as a 1-2-man team, you're going to want to use something like Godot, and then you're just going to use Enet, and you're going to use Godot to write your front end and your back end. And we show you how to code split in some of our tutorials, where you can fairly easily make one project and then check the server folder and all the server stuff gets compiled, and then check the client folder and then all the client stuff gets compiled.
I think that's under our dedicated server tutorial. I think I did it in there.
Yeah, and so that makes things not too difficult. And then basically for the server stuff, you just write your connection to database.
Yeah.
And an indie could have an MMO theoretically up relatively quickly. It wouldn't be as fully featured. You wouldn't have all those systems that they have there, but
like, okay, if you
need that if you're handling 100 players.
Let's say you don't do prediction, you just do point and click, so no prediction required, and your database is handled by something like PlayFab. And yeah, you could have an MMO out quickly.
Even if you don't do PlayFab, I think setting up your own database connection shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be too bad. It's just
I think you could avoid your AWS implementation and go with like a dedicated server, especially if you're small indie.
If you're small indie, a VPS could probably do it, and you can get those for like VPS is like a server you get, and you can get them for about $5.
So you have a VPS for your main game, and then you could share that depending on your database on that VPS, or you could have another VPS for your database.
The problem with that is scalability. And that's why a lot of MMOs use cloud now, is because VPSs and dedicated servers, once you're out, you're out. They're not going to help you on that end. So whereas
AWS, you can have it scale naturally. For an indie,
you're probably. I hope you get to that point. I truly do.
I hope you get to that point where that's an issue. But again, this is kind of a cross that bridge when you get to it.
Like realistically, you're probably not going to get to that, but you never know. Hopefully, but I hope you do.
Because like adding AWS and all that scalability and everything adds a lot of extra complexity.
Yes, unless you're doing something like an arena shooter or like Valorant, where then actually that takes off complexity from your coding. So And they're cheaper to do that way because like you're only using the resources you absolutely need. So it's a give and
Yeah,
take.
but it just depends on the game you're doing. I think they definitely showed you a AAA level tech stack and then said, ours is the equivalent, which kind of.
Yeah.
What do you think overall?
I think it's cool. I think it's
Mhm.
going to require time. I think it's going to require a lot of effort from the Godot community, and
Mm-hmm.
I think if this is just one of those databases that's in active research, they might get dethroned very quickly.
Yeah,
Because if this pops off and starts making money, someone else is going to come in with another solution and build in implementation to Unity, Godot, and Unreal better than they did. So
exactly. Like, I think Godot's devs or something, if this is really big, someone could build their own thing of SpacetimeDB that's like Godot, and it just automatically compiles to that
yeah,
if you choose to.
and then you'd have no reason to use this. So it's cool. I would love to play with it. I would not build a production game in it right now.
I think there's a lot of extra tools you would have to build on top of that to actually get there. Whereas I think there's a lot less tools you need to build if you were to use your regular ENET system in Godot.
That's our
That's just
opinion.
me.
You do what you want. Have fun.
We need to mess with it before I can fully say,
Yeah.
oh, this is a lot easier.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we have for today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys very much for watching.
Yeah.
Bye.
Let us know if you like the new format. See ya.
Yes, see ya.